So, I finally somehow got a top in Vanguard again. What's up folks, this video is a month overdue as the event we're talking about happened at the very end of April / start of May. This was during Daivangasai, which is the big Vanguard festival here in Japan that happens every single year during Golden Week, which is either at the end of April or start of May. So, there will be a vlog of the whole event as well that I still haven't edited, and I'm also supposed to put up a vlog from Antwerp as well, which was another video that I filmed a vlog at, but I just haven't had time to kind of like sit down, narrate, and edit. But I will try to get them out sometime in the coming weeks, I promise. But today I want to talk about the top 8 finish that I actually got at Daivangasai. So this was on day 2. So day 1 was basically the WGP, which I didn't participate in because I arrived quite late because I was moving to my dorm that day. So I just kind of like bought stuff, like, you know, went around filming and stuff like that. And then day 2, we had a team tournament, which was for standard post-festival collection because this was the day after the pre-release of the festival collection. So basically, you know, we bought boxes, picked up cards, and then we made a team with myself, one of my best friends here, Yuki, who played Nirvana with the new Emilia, and then Harepin, who is basically like my equivalent here in Japan, was also a commentator, works with Wishart all the time, and so he traveled out and played Magnolia. And so with this team, we managed to make it to top 8, and so there was about 270-ish teams, I think. And this was one of the many side events. There's a lot of other events happening at the same time, so you could either choose to play in the team tournament, or you could play for like the Nation King Cup, or in Premium, you could play with the new Premium Collection strides and play in like the Clan Leader tournament for that. So there's a lot of different things happening at the same time, so we just chose to play the team tournament. So first I'll introduce the deck that I used, which was Prison, and first of all, shoutouts to my friend Yuki because he actually lent me the deck on the day of the event because I didn't have it at the time. So this is now, you know, my own deck with my own cards, obviously. But back then I had to borrow his, and I didn't actually have it. So huge shoutouts and love to him. So this was the Prison deck that I played, and I'm pretty happy with it. Prison is basically one of my mains in Standard in Overdress. And I'll talk about my card choices and something that I would change as well because I do want to change up the list quite a bit after talking about it today. So let's get into it. So for the right deck, it's pretty straightforward. We're just playing the usual sort of, you know, the 4. So you have your starter, you have your Kirina Blue, who searches the prison, you have Reset Pink, who actually takes things from your opponent's hand, and then of course Seraph Snow, who is the main grade 3 that you want to ride first. One thing that's important to note with Reset Pink is that a lot of people here know how to play around this deck, and so for example a Nirvana opponent will always give you a Esperal idea off of this and then free it and bash your face in twice on their grade 2 turn, which is really annoying. So that's something you got to keep in mind. Like, some opponents really know how to play around this, and of course they will play around it very, very well. So that is the right deck. Then of course goes without saying the 1 Prison, because of course you just need 1. Going first, of course, it is much better because you search it and you can rest your Vanguard for the cost immediately, whereas going second you're gonna have to draw into one of your grade 1s or call down a like crit or something in order to rest it for the cost, because you don't want to be resting your Vanguard. So 1 Prison, of course, pretty self-explanatory. The boss card of the deck, which is of course the 4 Pure Lights. 4 Pure Light is a must. This card is basically your bread and butter. When you ride her, you can boss 1 and you Soul Blast out a Seraph, and then your opponent chooses 2 cards from their rear, soul, and hand and puts them to the prison. So a good player will always empty their soul in order to make sure that they don't give you anything off of the soul effect, and then obviously try to set up a field that you can't target either, so they only give you stuff from hand maybe. But even then is a very strong effect even if they play around it, because the second effect feeds into it, saying during your turn, all of your front row gets plus 5k for every 2 cards in your prison, and if you have 10 or more cards in prison, then they also get an extra crit. So a lot of people build their decks in order to reach that 10 count, and a lot of people play around this deck by making sure that you don't reach that 10 count from turn 4 onwards. And of course, if you don't draw into her, that's the most important thing. Like, you need to keep rewriting her every turn, because the opponent will try to empty their prison every turn, and eventually you might not have enough to even have any power. Like, I've had some local tournaments where over here just people play around it way too much. And then the new inclusion post-festival collection in my list is 3 copies of the Barrage Rutora. So Barrage Rutora is a really interesting card. She's a grade 2 who says during the battle that she attacked a rear guard or a unit in the Guardian Circle that was retired after her battle. So if she attacked the rear, or if your opponent guarded against her against any battle, that card, so that rear guard or that guardian, will go to the prison. So essentially what you can do is you can early game call her down and basically pressure your opponent to either take the damage and get pushed to 4 so you finish them easier, or you have more pressure on your your turn 3, or you basically keep her for later, and when you have like 2 prison on turn 3, you just attack into their rear, and then basically they are, you know, forced to either guard it and put the guard into prison, or take the rear guard swing, and that goes to prison instead. And then of course in late game 2, like I had a game in the tournament itself where I was on 9 prison against Bafsagara, and I just attacked into their rear, and then they were on 5, so, you know, they guarded, I go to 10, and, oh no, I think they were on 4, so it's like, they guarded, I go to 10, or they take it, I go to 10 anyway, so it creates for those nice little situations, so I like this card a lot, and I think I might even want to push it to 4, actually. And there's, of course, the very, very staple promo, which is the Accused Macalite, or Makarite. She's pretty simple. When you place her from hand on rear, Soul Blast 1, and you put the top card of your opponent's deck into the prison, and then after that, if you have 2 or more cards in your prison, then she gets plus 5k. So, very strong card. This helps deck your opponent out as well in the late game, so basically, you know, if you see they're low on deck, you just use this card a couple times, they run out of deck, and that's why people also play this girl, who I will be putting in after this, which is the Cuff Spring. I'm not playing her right now, but she works really well in conjunction with Accused Makarite in making sure that your opponent decks out and loses all the cards in their deck, which is pretty huge. It's another nice way to counterplay, and also it helps us reach the 3 cards in prison for turn 3. Now, of course, if you play Standard, you're probably pretty well aware that Magnolia is a very popular deck right now, and of course, in order to combat Magnolia, a lot of people here in Japan are playing the Perio Turquoise. I'm playing 3 copies. Perio Turquoise says, during your turn, if you have 2 or more cards in the prison, she gets plus 5k, but more importantly, in the front row rearguard circle, when your opponent's card is freed from the prison, that rearguard loses 5k for the turn. So Magnolia Elder gives plus 5k to all of their rearguards, right? So they're hitting for like 18 or 15, stuff like that. So if you have her in the front row and your opponent frees something, that plus 5k is nullified. So therefore, they're like inlet pulses are hitting for 13, and you'll notice we play a lot of grade 2, so that way we find it easier to guard those attacks. And if you have 2 of her in the front row, then everything loses 10k, so that way it's even rougher. This is also pretty rough for Bastion too. Like, I've noticed in the Bastion matchup that they kind of struggle when they have to free this stuff, because they're pretty low on cost in general, because they're soul blasting for their costs, they're also counter blasting a lot for their Oldens and whatnot, so having to free things and then not gain, like, have regular power on them, it really hurts. So oftentimes just leave stuff in the prison, and that way you scale out of control with all of your snowballing, which is also really good. So that's Perio Turquoise, a very good card that I do recommend playing. And then this is the card that I like. Coming from the West, I really liked her, but here in Japan people play around prison so much that I usually don't have anything in prison most turns, and I have to like work to, you know, just get it up again every turn. But at the moment, or in that tournament, I played 4 copies of Agara Rouge. So Agara Rouge is one of these set 1 cards, and of course she is a 15k attacker / 15k shield when your opponent has 2 or more cards in prison. But again, when they free everything from prison every turn, that makes it pretty rough to have that extra shield on her, which is her main kind of like the main reason you'd even play her. And when you call her, you Soul Blast 1 and choose an opponent's front row rearguard and put it to the prison, which again, they can just target that with when you ride Pure Light, so you can't even target anything with her. So that's why I want to take this out and play Cuff Spring instead, because I've lost the mirror to Cuff Spring, because it's so huge in the mirror. It's huge against Magnolia too, because Magnolia players oftentimes overdraw with their inlets, so you can just give up on trying to win from just like, you know, getting rid of their hand and just win by decking them out. So she is good. I think if you're in a meta where people don't play around prison much and leave stuff in your prison all the time that you can actually make use of her extra shield, then keep her. But otherwise, if you're also in Tokyo and you know that people play around prison a lot, then chances are it's not going to do you too well. Then I played 3 copies of Cheval Stud. Cheval Stud is a great card. You can almost one Soul Blast 1 and then choose an opponent's rearguard anywhere and imprison it, and if you have 3 more cards in prison, you draw 1. So you still get to draw even if you don't imprison with this effect, which is really cool. It is one of my favorite cards. I will probably put this up to 4 because the draw is really important to make sure you keep drawing into your Pure Lights and into your general grade 2s and pieces that you need to actually win with this deck. So I think I'm going to be counting one of my other grade 1s for a 4th copy of this as well, because it is a very good card. And then this is a card I really personally quite like because it is a deck thin, but I am thinking of putting back the Bagu Motor in order to, again, people play around the prison a lot, so you need Bagu Motor because that kind of helps you to play around people that play around it. But in the tournament, I played 4 copies of Suppress Glimmer. And this is one of the things I like about playing here, is that, like, every time I bring this deck to locals, I feel like I learned something new, and, like, I feel like changing some cards. Like, there's so much depth to this format that I didn't really feel when I played it in Europe as much. So it's really giving me some like new appreciation. Surprise Glimmer's effect is if you have a Seraph Vanguard, she has plus 5k power, so she's also an attacker that you can use in case you run out of resources, which I also really like. And when you place her from hand on rear, if you have 3 or more cards in prison, you can search your deck for another copy of herself and call it to a rearguard circle and shuffle your deck. So again, I also really like that because she's essentially just a good attacker. She thins the deck out and also just a free plus. Like, you don't pay any cost for this call effect, which I think is really, really good. So run 4 copies, but I'm thinking of putting her, taking one out and then changing this to Bagumotor, and then, or like maybe even putting 2 Bagumotor, one more, like turn this into Chevalstad and turn this into like a 4th of the on-hit grade 2 that imprisons opponents' guardians as well as rears. And then of course we have the staple side of things, of course 4 PGs, this goes without saying. Sometimes these will clog up your hand because all, like literally everything in this deck is a piece, which is kind of like, that makes some matchups really hard. Then of course the 1 over trigger, I have the SP one in my premium DP, so apologies, no bling here, but of course OT is very important. Then for trigger lineup, I ran 7 crits, so you can see here we have 3 of the regular ones and 4 of the effect triggers. Effect triggers in this deck are also pretty nice, especially in the mirror match, because the extra soul will help you deal with the mirror and freeing your own stuff all the time, which is pretty necessary. So these are pretty big in this matchup. I would recommend playing 7 purely because you really need the 4 draws, because you need to draw into your freaking pieces, as well as your pure lights. And then of course 4 heals. We played the Orpheus heal because of course this SP only costs like $4, which is kind of crazy over here. And then finally 4 of the effect draws. It's a 10k shield plus it's a draw trigger, which means we have a higher chance of hitting our pure lights, which is very important. So that's basically the entire deck. Now I want to quickly talk about my run during the tournament as well. So again, this was post festival collection, so you have to keep in mind when I talk about some of these decks. So round 1 I played against Bafsagara, and this was a player that was using basically all of the new cards, so they were using the new grade 2, and they just like set up multiple trick moons like really fast. And this is the game where I had that like 9 cards in prison, but then the grade 2 put me to 10 game. So I won that one and our team won it as well. Round 2 I played against Bafsagara again, but this person was not playing the new cards and was mostly just playing like the old stuff, but I managed to win that one as well. I just felt like I had a pretty good Bafsagara matchup in general, because they can run out of soul pretty easily, so just like forcing them to like have even less of it is even better, I guess. Plus my attacks are so huge that their shield doesn't feel like it's as relevant as like in Magnolia, where the shield actually stops the whole attack. And our team won that round as well. Then round 3 I played against Magnolia and lost to the freaking grade 1 that forces you to guard with 2 in hand, and I had like 3 PGs in hand, so I had 2 PGs in hand when he attacked with it, so I was like, well shit, I can't do anything about that. Or was it just the 1 PG? Because I think I had 2 PGs, but he had 2 attacks, so normally it could have stopped them, but then of course with that I couldn't do anything. I also misplayed at some point in that game because I think I 2 passes Magnolia Elder, and he just like went crit all in, and I could have easily like done a no pass for that. And he told me afterwards that like because he plays crits, he always all-ins on the Vanguard because the opponent is always going to take the rear swings. So that was an interesting kind of playstyle as well, so it was pretty huge. Round 4 played against Bastion, and I won that one as well. So at this point our team was undefeated. The Bastion, the round 4 we were also undefeated, so we were 4-0. So I won the Bastion game. It was pretty close, but again, Barrier Turquoise was pretty big in that one, basically just making it so that if they free their stuff, they, you know, it's either not worth it for them or they lose the cost they could have been paying for, like, you know, Aldins or Lagriels or stuff like that. So that was a pretty huge opponent, but that player really liked Gavriel, so we bonded over that. So I was 3-1 at this point. Our team was 4-0, which was very nice. And then around 5, we had our first loss as a team, and I lost to Nirvana. I have notes on this. I opened my prison, and on turn 3, my opponent checked OT and then crit me. I healed on 6, but next turn I was missing 5k to survive the last attack. So this is the point where we were praying we would make it in, because there was only 5 rounds of Swiss for 270-ish teams. So there was a chance we wouldn't make it in, but luckily we were 11th in the standing, so we made it to the top 16 cut. And for making it to the top 16, I actually have the prize card in my binder here. There we go. So this is the top 16 prize card that we got. So it's the Daivangasai over trigger. So this was only distributed to the top 16 teams, which was very nice. So I'm very proud that we managed to get this as a team. Sadly, couldn't make it past top 8, but let me talk about my top 16 game first, I suppose. So top 16 I played against Bruce, my first Bruce opponent. He turn 1 Dark States OTs me on offensive, but I managed to guard every turn very carefully. Like at points this was like a 1 to pass, and I lasted until the Pure Light turn and then just won off of the Pure Light basically because I had to eat like a big Bruce grade 4 turn with like multiple swirlers and whatnot, I think, but managed to survive it. He also played the new grade 2 from Festival Collection, the triple rare, which did put in some work as just like a big attacker. So we managed to win as a team as well, so we won top 16, we made it to top 8, so I was ecstatic at this point. I was like, oh my god, we're actually in top 8. But then in top 8, we faced against Ryo Gyoza's team, and this is, you know, basically made up of some of the best players in the country, and I actually lost before even riding this grade 3. So Asakura Yo is the deck he played, which is Shaman King, and and that deck is insane, especially in the early game. So he was basically attacking me with like 20k to guard lines and like using effects to look at my hand. So I opened like 3 pure lights. So I was pretty sad because I completely bricked that game, and I just was trying to survive it any way I could. But I like with 3 pure lights in hand and like not even having ridden my grade 3, I was like, I can't really do much about this. So yeah, our run sadly ended in top 8. I think Harepin lost his game there, and then Yuki I think won his. So it was a close run. We almost made it into top 4, and it would have been really great if we would have, but unfortunately we were just this close, so gonna have to get the run back next time. So yeah, this was my deck profile of my top 8 Seraph Snow deck. It feels really great to play here in Japan because it made me appreciate Standard a lot more. Like, I enjoyed Standard always, even like, you know, since it came out, even in Europe, but ever since from coming here, like every week I feel like I'm challenging myself to think what I could be doing better and like changing up my deck build every week and like trying to adapt to the different things that people are playing here. And honestly, that's just really motivating for me. Like, it's really fun to just kind of like challenge myself and think about what I should be doing. So that's really made me fall in love with this format a lot more. And like, we've been playing with these decks for basically like over half a year at this point, or not over, like close to half a year at this point. But even with that being said, I still really enjoy this format, and like it's gonna change, I hope, quite a lot when we get to Will Dress, but it's honestly just a crazy amount of fun. So I'm just really glad that I could be playing at such like high stakes events with such amazing players all over the place, you know, from around the country. And even at locals here, like people are really good. The average player is really good, and like I feel like I need to always be challenging myself to actually win these games. So yeah, really good vibes. Anyway guys, that's gonna be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, especially for those of you that are Pure Light mains. I hope that me sharing some of my knowledge that I've gained from this tournament and just having played here in Japan will help as well. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. I'll try my best to respond to them as much as possible. And then I will also be putting out quite a few deck profiles for stuff post-festival collection. Especially Tamayura is coming up. I'm going to try to change up my style of deck profiling with that one too. So I won't say too much for now, just look forward to it. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. But anyway guys, that's me for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.